At one point, it was the largest manufacturer of pianos in the 19th and the 20th century. Today, Ted, it doesn't even exist as a piano manufacturer. Whatever happened to Kimball?
Hi, this is Ted with Alamo Music in beautiful downtown San Antonio, Texas.
And I'm Patrick Marr. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, check out our other YouTube channels, our other videos, sign up for notifications, like our videos, leave us comments. We really appreciate all the support, and we love to interact with you guys. Well, Ted, I know this is one of our favorite things to do, talk about the history of a manufacturer. I think it really kind of uncovers where we are today here in a music store, and a lot of the things around us that we sell and people love and brings joy to a lot of people's homes or concert venues or recital halls. But we get to talk about what was the origin. We get to look back in the past in the crystal ball and say, well, how did they get here? And how did this Kimball right behind us get right behind us? Besides us kind of moving it today and putting it behind us. How did it get here? And what's the story? What's the real story behind it?
Well, Kimball's one of the very, very interesting American piano manufacturers that has kind of a unique history. And it's kind of similar to other piano companies at the same time. The guy started off, well, here is the Braveheart reference.
Yeah.
His name was William Wallace Kimball.
So he was from Scotland, William Wallace?
Nah, he was born here in the
Chicago
States.
native, right?
I think he moved to Chicago. He may have been from probably. I didn't follow the story.
Early 1800s, right?
Early 1800s. I think he was born in the late 20s, like 1828.
Okay.
But by 1859, he's in the piano and organ business.
As a retailer, right?
As a retailer. He set up a store in Chicago. And
it was like a little small, tiny, like really just
it's like a
jewelry shop size.
It was kind of like a desk. Of course, the traditional desk and phone you're in business. Well, he just had a desk and a location and kind of took orders and had a good supply of Steinways and Chickerings. And then he had some other lower brands that he sold that were more affordable. And so he went from that, just retailing, and then he found the guy that made keys for reed organs. So this guy had a set of keys, and then he found someone that he could put some reeds into it, and then he knew a guy that made cabinets. So he got into the organ assembly business and ended up building his own factory.
Yeah, 5 stories.
5-story factory.
Before a lot of these manufacturers even existed, he had a 5-story factory in Chicago.
And he was the largest and most successful organ sales company in the world. And it's kind of fascinating. I was looking at the numbers, and in 1887, I think, is when they had their big factory built, but they averaged manufacturing and selling over 15,000 units a year. And that is a lot of organs.
It's over 1,000 a month.
And the first thing I thought was like, how are they getting rid of all these organs and where are they going to? Then you follow up and you read that they were right in the day. They had door-to-door salesmen selling organs, and then after they had drained all the organ sales, they went and door-to-door because they were in the piano business by then.
So are there no organs anymore because there's not as many door-to-door salesmen?
Well, I don't know. And then I started thinking about, when I was doing this research, like, how many generations of people younger than me, okay?
That's hard to do.
That's hard to do. That you got to count. That have never probably really experienced a door-to-door salesman.
They're still around. I'm sure people watching this have experienced door-to-door salespeople in the last couple months.
I think the last one I had when I was in a suburban atmosphere was, believe it or not, an encyclopedia salesman.
Wow.
Reminds me of those old Monty Python
Yeah.
skits. That guy did not want to open the door because he thought it was an encyclopedia salesman.
Well, it's interesting to see that this company became the largest dealer of pianos because it moved into the manufacturing world.
Well, yeah, slowly but surely after that, with his success in the organ business and assembling, and then he actually built a plant to manufacture his own organs. And it didn't take him much to start building his own pianos.
And they survived some hardships too. I think the Chicago fire actually burned down their store before it was a factory. They burned down their store, and then he built this he rebounded. He built a factory, started distributing across the country, and then Kimball becomes kind of a powerhouse in, like, I would say, kind of the golden age of pianos, where there was a lot of manufacturers. And we've touched on this before, but from the 1880s to about the 1930s, right before World War II. There was a plethora of manufacturing being done. Them.
That was probably the piano manufacturing in its heyday, because Steinway was not really recognized as a dominant force. They were a dominant force.
There was a lot of choices, and for Kimball to be the top dog during some of this time period, it's incredible to hear the history of how it came from a retail store that burned down at some point. And I think they invested a ton into manufacturing, and their plans were to build a bigger factory. And then World War II happened, and a lot of piano manufacturers went the way of, well, we got to help in the war efforts.
Correct.
And Kimball, no exception, they started building airplane parts.
For a couple different airplane manufacturers. Boeing was one, and then I think Douglas or some of the airplane manufacturers,
so these
like
big
Douglas,
factories.
that were cargo planes and stuff like that.
Yeah, the big factories would convert, and they had skilled technicians, and they would make very precise parts, and probably help make a better piano eventually too. But then after that, there was a little bit of a decline in the piano world because production and efforts for playing piano kind of slowed down.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't take long before, I think it's by the early 50s, that Kimball is once again the largest piano and organ manufacturer in the world. They're doing a knockout business.
Well, what happened too is they built this bigger factory and ramped up production, all this stuff. But while doing that and trying to make it through the slow times, they were hurting for capital, so they sold.
They sold.
59, I think was the year.
In 1959, they were purchased by the Jasper Company, and Jasper was a competitor that made mostly upright pianos. And I wanted to go back to that. When they were booming, it's kind of funny because they were booming right before the spinet piano took off. And the spinet piano is one of those things that grew all through the 50s until you see one on the I Love Lucy show.
Oh.
And that was a Baldwin upright piano, and that caused a big surge in piano sales in the early 60s. And that leads me back to part of Kimball's aggressive marketing plan with the door-to-door salesman. In the 50s and 60s, but particularly in the 70s, almost every single game show on TV produced in the United States had products from Kimball that were a prize, like behind door number one, or you get this organ or you win this piano.
So it was a pop culture icon.
It was a pop culture icon.
Okay.
And Kimball never manufactured a spinet piano.
Yeah, that's interesting,
and
right?
That's pretty much what built the Wurlitzer Piano Company. Is they built a lot of their sales on spinet pianos.
It was a smaller. So if you don't know what a spinet piano is, they're a much smaller. They don't even make them anymore. But at the time, they were a way for a lot of companies to have a very cheap initial offering that was a high profit margin, and everyone would have a piano. They'd have a spinet in their home.
Something to play and practice on. The concept was to take what was normally an upright piano, cut the soundboard in half, so you could make two pianos that were about this big and sell them for about a little less than what half the price or
and so it was an interesting concept, and it sold really well. But yeah, Kimball did not adopt that practice. They said, hey, they built something between a console and a spinet size, but they kind of stayed true to a bigger piano, and they built a factory actually close to where we are in Texas, Texas-Mexico border in Reynosa in Mexico. And so they built that factory to kind of make a cheaper piano. But yeah, eventually they sold to Jasper, who was a furniture manufacturer primarily and also made electronics. But Kimball, kind of because of that new factory, still ramped up production and was again the biggest.
They were hurt for cash.
They were the biggest manufacturer again, right there in the 60s and 70s. And it was cool because they were able to do things like acquire Bosendorfer.
Right. No, that's something that the Jasper Company did. And
after they were purchased.
After they had purchased Kimball, Jasper gets a deal on the Krakauer Brothers piano manufacturing, I think, in New York. And then they just happened to come across a great deal and purchase the Bosendorfer Company. And then what happens is Jasper realizes, no one knows who we are, but everyone knows who Kimball is. So Jasper trashes their name and adopts Kimball as their new company.
It's a smart
name,
move.
which is a smart move, and they're still in business today, and we'll eventually get to
Yeah.
that. They're still around. But it's interesting because the first thing that happens is Bosendorfer and Jasper get together and they start making a better piano because there was a dip in sales and a dip in their marketing efforts after the purchase by Jasper, and they increased their piano quality, tone, sound, all that kind of stuff, and became more competitive again. So by the late 60s and 70s, they're marketing aggressively on TV.
So this is I feel like a good stopping point to talk about Kimball as a piano now. Kind of, so if you have a Kimball, if you're interested in looking at a Kimball and you're kind of curious why you don't see new Kimballs for sale anywhere, in this time frame, what would you say from about 1960 to about 1980? I would say 84. For other reasons.
84 is a great year for Kimball.
But those pianos, those Kimballs that are available on the market, we have an older Kimball here. I would say it falls in that age range. But what would you say the characteristics of a Kimball piano are? Was it a good piano? What did people like about it? What did people not like about it? Why is it not a Steinway? What kind of piano is it?
Their upright pianos and their grands are made kind of on two different levels. There's like just the home use general model, and then there's the upper tier ones that they each made. Now, some of the lower run of the mill pianos, and you'll find this on the internet. It'll say, do not ever invest in remanufacturing or refurbishing or redoing an overhaul on a Kimball piano because it's just not one of those recognized in terms of...
It's not cost efficient.
It's not cost efficient. So with that being said, the idea is that they wanted to make a premium type of piano or something that was at least competitive in the marketing world of Baldwin and Steinway, and include the grands and the uprights in that. So they had pianos where they actually imported the Schwander actions from England, and those are in their more premium pianos.
The Schwander action is one of the best
at the time. Schwander is at the time, and is still considered. They still manufacture actions. They are the oldest piano action manufacturer. They've been in business since 1810.
Wow.
And the other thing that happened is they invented this Viennese grand.
We've seen them here before.
They're some of my favorite pianos.
A lot of the times it will say Viennese right here on the fall board next to the Kimball, but just an incredible instrument, right?
Right. And the nickname we have for those are like American Bosies, because they're kind of like a Bosendorfer influenced piano with the Schwander action, a different treatment of the soundboard, and I believe all the different temperaments on the felt in the piano as well. Makes them very, very much like the Bosendorfer pianos at about a third of the price. And this is when they were new. Yeah. And now they're just really nice. Occasionally you get them in, they're 6'10" or 6'7", something like that. They're just...
Some of them are smaller too. I think we've got some that are in they're right around like 6 foot and under.
Now they also made the Petite, the La Petite piano.
Oh yeah, the Kimball La Petite. This was interesting because we saw that they were offering a baby grand all the way at 4'5". Which is
was it 4'5" or 4'7"?
No, 4'5".
4'5".
Yeah, 4'5", which is tiny. They don't. The smallest baby grand you can buy today.
Here's the thing about the Petite, the La Petite piano.
It's cute.
It's very cute. It's extremely cute, and it looked great. I think behind the curtain of number 2 there on Let's Make a Deal. It was a very small piano, and the only thing about them that I did not like was that the music desk that looked very similar to this was built onto the lid. Ooh. And the lid was always shut. And so you couldn't partially open the piano. And you couldn't lift the lid at all. It was just closed like a box.
Interesting.
And they sold a lot of those pianos.
I'm sure, yeah. People love them.
Well, especially the ones that like to put their family photos on top of the grand piano. You never had to worry about anyone picking up the lid and the picture sliding off. But it did have that built-in music stand right on top. And they were a functional, very small. So
the verdict is on Kimball grands and uprights. It kind of depends. We would never recommend taking one and redoing a whole refinishing job on it or a whole refurbishing job because it's going to be very extensively expensive and it's going to take a long time and you're never going to see that money again. It's not going to be worth it.
It's not a 1920s Mason and Hammond, Steinway, or Chickering, so it's going to be hard, or Bechstein or any of those to get any money back
But
out of
it
that.
could be a very decent beginner piano, and so that's probably, if you had questions about is a Kimball piano worth it, a lot of them might be great starter pianos. And if you've had a technician look at them and redo and maybe do a couple hammers, tune it up, it could be a very great starting instrument. And of course, we do get Kimball baby grands all the time and grand pianos, and the Viennese do sell a little bit quicker and are kind of sought after.
That I've always noticed about the Viennese pianos that we've had come through here, and the ones that I've spotted, is they've never been pounded out or overplayed like a lot of the Steinways and the older Masons, and even some of the Yamahas that you find like in the school. They used to have a couple of Kimball Viennese out at UTSA before they were a Yamaha. This is like back in the early 80s when I was going there. They had a couple of Kimballs that were in there, and they were the Viennese, and they were lovely, lovely pianos.
Yeah.
And then they had some other Kimballs that were not the Viennese models. But the one thing about the Viennese is that they were never really sold to concert halls. They were never really sold. They were sold more as an in-home piano. And when you get them, when we find them, they're never really overplayed.
They're very
it's
nice.
It's almost like they were never used, and they're extremely nice. And in some instances, after you go tune, you get a tuner and a regulator through them, it's better than a lot of the new pianos we get.
Yeah, no, they're very, very beautiful. Well, Ted, we're gonna listen to the piano. We're gonna hear you play it here in a little bit. But I'm excited to hear this. It's an older Kimball, but we'll check it out just as a sound profile on this one. A little bit older than some of the ones that we see, but a great sounding instrument. So let's check it out. Well, thanks for playing, Ted.
Oh, you're
I know
welcome.
You've played a lot of Kimballs in your life. This is an interesting
It's a smaller one. It's like a spinning
Yeah,
branch.
it's a little smaller than we're normally seeing, but we've played some amazing sounding Kimballs. So, any last remarks about Kimball? What's your favorite fact
about Kimball? Is that the Viennese pianos are, for the most part, they were probably one of Kimball's best products that they made. As a matter of fact, they had 84 of them in the 1984 Olympics, playing Rhapsody in Blue. They had them. It's pretty neat. You can see the videotape on YouTube. You can go back and watch the grand opening of the games. The only thing about it that I've since learned and how much we've changed is that all the 84 piano players were all men dressed up in tuxedos. Half of them were really women. They had to impersonate male players.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how much push around there was back then, if you can believe that. Yeah, times have changed.
Yeah.
But those Viennese pianos were specially made and manufactured and marketed for the Olympic opening games.
Yeah, and I think they were baby grands. They were 5'8" or something, which was interesting.
They were anywhere from 5'8" to 9 foot, and they had problems at the last minute scrounging up enough pianos to fit in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 1984 Olympics, a cool story. And then Kimball made their last piano all the way up in 1996, right?
They had the crew and the staff autograph a piano that supposedly is still on display in their Jasper showroom. And Kimball is still around. They're in the furniture business. They have, I think, home furnishings. Their biggest sector of business is office furniture. And they also are big in, I believe, the convention and hospitality business. And that is what the Kimball Company is doing today. But of all the ex-piano companies and manufacturers, they're the only ones that, as far as I know, are still in business of some sort, not the piano business, but
doing their own thing.
Yeah. Doing their own thing.
Well, and then they had held on to Bosendorfer, the brand, up until about 2002. Bosendorfer is one of the premier piano manufacturers out of Austria, and kind of why there's that Viennese edition is because of the correlation with Bosendorfer. But Bosendorfer, up until 2002, so they held on to it for about 6 more years. Jasper and they held on to the name, but it was all operated out of Austria, and then or Vienna.
Yeah.
And so they, at that point, sold back to Austrian buyers. And then Bosendorfer today is owned by Yamaha. But it's just interesting.
They had about 10 years, I think, they had Austrian buyers. An investor bought it to bring back the original company ownership
to Austria. Yeah, so just very interesting. And I think Kimball has one of the, it spans the great length of piano manufacturing, at least in the United States.
It does. It hits the first boom, which was in the 19th century. Then it hits that second boom, which is right all the way up to World War II, from the turn of the century up.
So do they make it to piano heaven?
I think they're in piano heaven.
So where is Kimball today? They're gonna go. We're gonna put them in Kimball in piano heaven.
Okay. Here's a strange fact. If you've ever gone to Graceland and you've seen the special gold grand piano that Elvis had, that Priscilla purchased for him, that's a Kimball piano, made and manufactured specifically for the king. For the king
himself. Well, we are Alamo Music Center. Thank you guys for watching. This is Ted Barstow. I'm Patrick Marr. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and our other channels. We like to bring you guys lots of fun, interesting content. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask and reach out to us. Leave us some comments. Let us know what you like, what you want to see, and hopefully we'll bring you guys some more fun stuff. Thanks for watching.